Evening, everybody. So before I start, I just wanted to say that, you know, I have not known more about anything than I do about this. Like, it's actually kind of scary. I don't like to use the term obsession a lot, but I've delved deep into this. Um, so, yeah, without further ado, I just wanted to start by saying, you can press play. My name is Yassine, and I have an addiction. Ever since a young age, and while it's not as dangerous as some of the ones you might see on the screen, it's close to about as expensive. There's people who've been helping me through it, and it's taken me far and also held me back. My obsession is books. These are, my shelves, my room, my mom's room, my dad's. Books crammed into every corner without making it too messy. And just throughout the years, I've been reading and buying and reading and buying. Those are all the books I'm reading right now. And that's what my bag looks like on an average day. And that's during the school year with all my school stuff on top. And I remember very distinctly one moment of my dad unloading my school bag and showing me just how many books I had that weren't for school. And I love reading, and then this happened. So Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a series written by Rick Riordan to get his own ADHD son into reading. And it uses the Greek myths and places them in modern-day situations. It's a series that spoke to me a lot, and it's a great series. But as I kept on reading through all the books, I started getting less interested in what Percy Jackson was doing and more interested in the actual myths themselves. These myths were once considered religion, were facts. They were facts. And as I started learning more about the myths themselves, I started noticing all the different ways that these myths are still impacting our modern lives. For example, architecture, art and literature, symbols, even root words. For example, narcissism comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, who was immortal, who thought he was above the gods, and was treated to a very horrible punishment where he couldn't eat or drink, but food was always in front of him. A word that I'm sure most of us are familiar with is erotic, which comes from the Greek god Eros, who was the first primordial embodiment of love. And so that made up that word, which is used in all sorts of situations. Even daily things like cereal comes from the Roman name for the Greek goddess Demeter, and that Roman name is Ceres. She was the goddess of agriculture, and that involves crops and wheat and the things that make cereal. Yeah. Names like the Titanic, which come from the Titans. They were the first rulers of the world before the gods in the myths. They were conquered horribly, but they were also very powerful, which probably a bad omen to name your ship after that, probably why they sank. Even symbols, like the medical symbol. A lot of people think it's the staff of Hermes. It's actually the staff of his son, Asclepius, who was the god of medicine, right? And the American eagle, which was the animal of Zeus, the leader of the gods. As for literature, books like Harry Potter were affected tremendously by Greek and Roman mythology, both in the names of spells, and Harry Potter himself, who was made invulnerable to the great evil, Voldemort, by a blessing from his mother, much like Achilles. And as for the Egyptian side, the Egyptians were always very heavily connected to the Nile. But so much so that they built all their houses and residential areas on the east side of the Nile, east side of the Nile, and all of their tombs on the west side of the Nile. Because as the sun god Ra rose in the east, he was reborn, And as he set in the west, he died and had to go through the journey of the night to rise again. This philosophy still impacts our modern worlds. If you look at, probably the biggest example is the River Thames, there are slightly, but still significantly, more residential areas on the east bank of the river, and you'll find a lot more Egyptians and Muslims on the east bank of the river than on the west bank for that very reason. And those are some of the biggest impacts. Something so subliminal. Another big one was the obelisk. Obelisks in Egyptian mythology were the very first piece of land to rise out of chaos, the first light of hope in a sea of evil. And every major country and city has their own obelisk. They all wanted a piece of Egypt, the most powerful civilization of all time. Even Bermuda has their own obelisks. That one, I believe, is at City Hall. And that one is in St. George's at the tomb of George Summers. So these are just some of the biggest impacts. All in all, these gods, myths, legends, while hopefully fiction, still impact our lives today. The beliefs that they set, the lessons that they taught are still around. And just, it's good to know about these things, because if they affect our lives so much, we should know why. This is the author of the Percy Jackson series and all the books that he's written. I started like here, and I've read all of these. I've never been so much into a series. It's a great series. It's awesome. And the cause behind it, to get his ADHD son into reading, was cool. I'd like to thank these people for feeding my addiction. I would like to point out this picture of my dad, which is very good because he lectures a lot. And yeah, just thank you to them. And yeah.
Anybody has any questions? Anybody?
Okay. Hi, Yassine.
Hi, Alia.
What's up? So, who is your favorite Greek or Roman god and why? Oh, or whoever. Who's your favorite god?
I was always partial to Poseidon and Hades. Hades because he's one of the more powerful ones, but he got the short end of the stick. He's known as evil even though he's not really evil. And Poseidon because I always liked the ocean. But one of the more lesser-known ones was actually, I mentioned him, Asclepius. He's the only god other than Hades who can raise people from the dead because of medicine and stuff. So I always enjoyed that. It's not something a lot of people know about, so that's something I found cool.
Okay. Hey, Yassine. Hey. Over here.
Hi.
To elaborate on Alia's question, is there a particular myth that relates to like modern society that you're particularly fond of?
I really like the myth of Narcissus because people these days are very cocky. And so the myth of Narcissus, he fed the gods human flesh, right? Because he thought he was above them and he thought that it was a whole convoluted thing. He like baked his own son. It was horrible. And then because of that, he can no longer eat. Not only can he no longer eat, there's food like right there. He can't grab it. It's like his punishment is he has grapevines hanging above him and pure drinkable water surrounding him. But as soon as he bends down to drink it, it's gone. And as soon as he reaches up to grab the grapes, they're gone. That would suck. So just...
I understand you're into mythology. Do you like science fiction as well, or
Yes.
have you got some favorite authors in science fiction as well?
I really like the guy who wrote... actually, no, I didn't like the guy who wrote Ender's Game. Not necessarily. The only author I've ever paid attention to is this author. I pay attention more to the stories, and you can't count like Harry Potter as science fiction. That's fantasy. But Whoever wrote, what was it called? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? That guy. Yeah.
I thought you did an amazing job. So congratulations as the youngest speaker.
Thank you.
What do you think you want to do when you grow up? Just curious.
I have too many ideas and I have too little ideas, because there's ideas that I want to do that are very tough fields to get into, and there's ideas that I want to do that haven't been created yet, and there's all sorts of stuff. But the biggest one would probably be concept art. So, quick example, how many people in here have seen a Marvel movie? Like a superhero movie? So, concept artists, before any superhero movie, they're the people who draw, all right, this is what Iron Man's new suit is going to look like. And then they take that to the producer, and the producer is like, give me 3 variations on this. And then they draw again, and then the producer chooses their favorite, and they're like, give me another 3 variations. And it's just drawing what I love. So that sounds cool. And I enjoy drawing. I enjoy superhero movies, comics, all that.
Well, thank you, Yassine.